Apple just had its most exciting event in years. Let's talk about it.
Welcome to the All Future Podcast, where we talk all things tech, AI, Apple, all sorts of stuff throughout the week. If you're enjoying these videos, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much to everyone who's been watching and subscribing. We really appreciate it. And today we're getting into Apple and the very exciting event that they just had. I think it kind of met all the expectations we had and exceeded them in some ways. So the event started with Apple giving an overview of the Apple Vision's launch, how that is doing, some examples of people using it, and in March, how they unveiled the MacBook Air, 13-inch and 15-inch, and they've become the best-selling 13 and 15-inch laptops. And then they reviewed the iPad, how awesome it is, and then got right into the iPad Air, which was definitely a very exciting release, but was not at all the focus of this event. So, get us into that, Matt.
Yeah, so cool event. I like this kind of format. They kept it pretty tight. It's under an hour. And then they were done with the iPad Air portion like 7-8 minutes in.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh man, they're just flying through this thing. So kind of cool. iPad Air, I think here's the headline. Last week, did you want an iPad Pro? Because I have good news for you. The new iPad Air is essentially the last generation iPad Pro.
For far less expensive.
Far less money. So off the top, two sizes. That's been a rumor we've been talked about here for weeks. So it's 11 and 13 inch. I think that 13 inch is going to be a very, very popular option. The overall kind of form factor of it, not really that changed that much. Another big change though in that design is moving that camera to landscape. Another part of the rumors that had been around for a while.
Yeah.
So it now has the camera on the top when you're holding it in the landscape orientation. M2 chip on it. So that's a fairly big upgrade from the previous Airs. And again, what the iPad Pros had last week,
Yeah.
So this is a great upgrade, I think. And if you're in the market for an iPad, it's a very specific use case where I'd recommend the Pro model to you. This iPad Air has a lot of things I think that a lot of people are going to like.
Absolutely. And one of the big things they mentioned for that 13-inch model, which for a while I've been talking about is going to be extremely popular, the statistic they noted was that 50% of users who buy an iPad Pro buy the large one. So
that was interesting.
Yeah. For a lot of people, I think maybe they're already getting the more expensive one, so they're like, might as well go all the way. But I think it's also like people are upgrading to Pro because of that screen size. And now there's a much cheaper version because this starts at $599 and then it's $799 for the large one.
That is a steal. If you last week were thinking about a 13-inch iPad Pro that was $1,300. And now you can get pretty close to the same thing. I mean, the displays aren't as nice. There's some different things like that. But pretty close to that functionality at a much more discounted price. Like you're saying, we're $799, right, for the 13-inch. That's a great deal. $599 for the regular size.
Yeah.
Again, this is going to meet almost everyone's needs who wants an iPad. And so this is a great deal, I think. And especially when you think about that, it's also going to have the iPad Pencil Pro functionality to it.
Yeah.
So, great deal. Really cool. Not crazy about the colors.
Yeah. But, what did we have? We have blue, purple, starlight, and space gray.
Yeah. So the kind of colors of this blue and purple. I don't know. Neither of them really excited me that much. But cool. Options out there for people. And like I'm saying, I think that 13-inch iPad Air, I think, is going to be the most popular iPad people buy.
Definitely. And one of those highlights that makes this just like the Pro before it is the M2 chip. So this has the M2 chip, big upgrade there, and starts at that pricing we've been talking about. But then the event very much shifted to the focus, which is the iPad Pro. And initially, they pulled a book off the shelf, and I think you noticed it said Thin Possible, which is pretty cool. And they talked about crushing the limits of what an iPad can do, and it's impossibly thin. And it is true. Again, per usual, I don't think most customers are going to notice this, but it is very cool as a piece of trivia, which is that it's the thinnest Apple product ever.
Yeah. Cool. I'm super into this.
Yeah.
And I'm also an insane person that doesn't use any kind of cases or anything on my Apple products. So for me, I'm going to notice that super thin thing. I think the vast majority of people are going to use this thing in the Magic Keyboard case or in some kind of protective case. And they're not going to notice this at all. It's going to feel like a regular iPad.
Yeah. But even so, I mean, you might notice it. I guess over time you notice these things. So it's 5.3 millimeters for the 11-inch, 5.1 millimeters for the 13-inch. But it's much lighter, too. I think they said the Pro is like a quarter lighter than it was before, which that might be very noticeable, especially when you're tacking on a Magic Keyboard and stuff like that. But it's just as strong as before, so it's not like it's thinner and now you're going to be able to crack it, at least until we see that
undoubtedly,
headline.
there'll be a YouTube video with someone bending the 13-inch in half. But,
absolutely.
But that person's an idiot. So.
But the other big headline here is the display, and we got lots of Apple jargon here, which is always exciting. We got tandem OLED displays. You want to talk about these?
What's better than one OLED, two OLED? So it's actually, this is Apple, and talking about Apple marketing, they're basically saying this is the best display ever made. Not best display in an iPad. They're like, this is it. This is the best display technology. This is the best display that mankind has created and put out, at least in this version of the multiverse. So, and in Apple fashion, several marketing kind of terms there. The tandem OLED, which is essentially two OLEDs stacked on top of each other. And they talked about, all the benefits this gives them, nits and all this kind of stuff. And the actual display name, and this sounds like a thing that when we're talking about future Apple products where we just make up a bunch of Apple jargon, but it's Ultra Retina XDR. So it's three Apple marketing terms matched into one. None of them mean display. So, so that's an interesting thing to note. I'm sure it's going to look spectacular. I think
so.
And talking about what's going to make people buy the Pro over the Air, I think there's going to be people who do want the power of that M4 chip. We'll talk about that in a second. But when you see an OLED display in person, it is better. It is way better. You can't go if you switch to OLED TV. You're not going to go back to some older technology at all. Like the deepness of the blacks, the dynamic range of it. It's a much better experience to see things on OLED. And I think if you're in the Apple store and you're kind of considering an Air, I can see the Apple, store employee guy goes, well, have you seen the screen on the Pro? And someone picked that up and go, oh, wow, this is way better.
Yeah.
So pretty cool. The other thing with the display is that they're going to offer it in a textured option, which is interesting, less glare, I guess. I'm somewhat tempted by that just because I do a lot of art stuff on the iPad that's meant to go to print, not meant to seen on screen. So that kind of texture display helps me in that world. Apple's offered texture displays on things in the past. I know a lot of people who've gotten texture displays from Apple have regretted it, not because it's not good, just because the gloss displays look so much better. like a gloss display just looks shinier, nicer. Yeah. So maybe outside of the guy in the demo film shooting his rock climbing documentary or whatever, I don't know if the texture display is going to be the way to go for a lot of people. But I'm glad Apple's offering it and thinking about those use cases for their customers.
Yeah, for a director or whatever situation where you need an iPad out in the field, it's brighter than ever before. It's got the OLED stuff, and then you can add nano textures so you have reduced glare. It seems like it's overall going to be a win, and that's the exact Pro market that they're going for. But that enables some of these features that are furthermore enabled by the M4 chip. Yep. So they entirely skipped M3 on the iPad here. I think this is the first device to have an M4 chip. Yep. They said basically it's so powerful what we wanted to do with this thing. It has to use the next gen here. And it specifically has a display engine for the tandem OLED display, which is interesting. It's 50% faster CPU than the M2. And there's tons of jargon you can go over there to talk about why this is better. The neural engine, all of this stuff. It's 4 times faster, though, than the iPad Pro with M2. So that's a big jump from just a couple days ago.
Yeah.
But... yeah.
And Apple uses these, whatever, it's 4 times faster. It's 30% more efficient. I mean, obviously, these are statistics that they can manipulate and pull. 4 times faster is what? What does that even mean? But I think the big headline in this is it's going to label what we would have called machine learning 18 months ago, you know, but now we'll call AI features. Some pretty slick AI features this thing is going to enable. They did the demos of Final Cut for iPad 2 and Logic for iPad 2, and some pretty cool features in those things. And I think me and you both kind of, work in the creative professional world.
Yeah.
I was pretty excited about this stuff. What are you thinking?
Yeah, they showed off. It very much looks like just a tiny teaser of what we're going to get at WWDC. So we saw them do automatic background removal in Final Cut. So seeing things like that built in is really exciting. But then they completely unveiled, which was a surprise, Final Cut Pro 2 and Logic Pro 2, which both include a few very exciting features. First, on the AI side, there's that thing I mentioned, the background removal. But on Logic, there's, I think it's called Chroma Glow. And this, in some way, uses AI, and it's just to emulate like actual physical hardware that people use for audio processing. So that's something we see a lot, but having it built into an iPad and Apple's own version is impressive. AI musicians, so they've already had a drummer, but they're adding a bass player and a piano player. I have mixed feelings about that as a musician myself.
As someone who makes a living being a human musician, yeah, yes. I can see.
But Stem Splitter is the big one that I will definitely use. And I like that they pulled a voice memo that's like of a band performing, and they can split it into 4 tracks. I've experimented with stuff like this to like kind of isolate an instrument and be able to learn the part or whatever. And I think that's going to be huge for people learning, but then especially people producing stuff, because you can just take out whatever piece of any song you want and then use that.
Yes, it really, if you're in the remix world or whatever, it's really cool. And just a fun parlor trick. I know if you remember, Kanye West made that little device that would it would play MP3s, but like strip out, it would do the stems. It's kind of a weird little trick thing to do. But great if you want to do karaoke too, I guess.
That's
right?
True.
Just drop the vocal track or whatever. And then on the video side with Final Cut, they showed off this whole live multicam thing where you're using multiple iPhones with a new app that there's going to be available for presumably iPads and iPhones, the Final Cut camera, which will let it sync. And then it was pretty neat in the demo because the director there is changing between multiple camera angles and controlling things on the camera. The iPhones are shooting in cinematic mode, so they have the depth of field system built into it, and he's changing the focus from the iPad on the cameras. That's a pretty neat setup. That's
Absolutely.
A pretty neat setup. And I think for people who are kind of in this world like us, which is a semi-professional studio setting, we don't have like millions of dollars here, but we've got nicer stuff, right? And we want to make something that is the best thing we can make with the resources we have. This is going to be a cool setup. This is going to be a cool setup. I can see a lot of people in, the game streaming world, the live streaming world, the podcast kind of world, all those kind of content creation prosumer space. This is a neat tool, I think, and this is going to sell iPads. So people are going to be like, this is a cool thing for me to get. This is much cheaper than buying, I don't know, like Blackmagic and all these companies make all these professional camera splitters and things like that. And it's like, oh, I've already got iPhones. It's like you just tell everyone that day, hey, show up with your iPhone on set, load this app, and we're going to have an instant multicam setup. That's pretty cool.
Definitely. Because everyone already has the iPhone to shoot with, so then you just add another one, sync it to the iPad. I am curious how that works logistically as far as like quality. Is it streaming to the iPad? Is it then saving locally?
That's what I'm wondering. It's like, is it doing like 4 streams of 4K footage, saving locally onto the iPad so you can keep editing it, right? It's got to be doing that because it's building a timeline.
And how is it connect? How are all the phones connected?
So are you just blasting through all your storage on your iPad, shooting some kind of 4K streams?
That's why you got to get the 1 terabyte.
You got to get the 1 terabyte. That's the move, right? You got to get the 1 terabyte. When they also talked about, there might be ways that you can offload it because they talked about the Thunderbolt compatibility of it and using external drives and things like that.
Definitely.
So, but it for the first time got me thinking about trying video editing on the iPad. Like I'm like iPad has been cool if whatever, I'm on a plane and I want to do a quick assembly of something. That's a cool thing to do with an iPad right now. But I'm not doing any kind of final thing on it. I wouldn't edit even a video as simple as this on the iPad right now. But maybe with these features and tools built in there, I might go for it. And I just looked, Apple's press release did mention that some of these features are coming to the Mac versions of Logic and Final Cut. I did not click on the press release to see which ones, but so I think there's going to be some crossover, and Apple maintains compatibility between those apps and the desktop versions for the most part. So I imagine a lot of those features are going to come across, but probably not this live switching thing, multicam thing. I imagine that's staying on the iPad maybe because it's kind of built around the app ecosystem.
Yeah, and it's for you to walk around with that instead of a computer.
Yeah, so. But either way, cool stuff. And speaking of filmmaking and stuff, cameras, new camera system on there. It seemed pretty cool to me. What you think?
Yeah, it seems pretty much basically the same functionality we've seen. I think they know that people aren't needing a 48 megapixel camera on their iPad, and maybe they're even saving the world from people filming with iPads,
like ruining concerts or whatever. Yeah.
But it has the same LiDAR scanner and then an adaptive True Tone flash, which they demo as an AI feature with document scanning to where it's able to take it at multiple different lighting scenarios and eliminate shadows for you automatically. That's like a very small preview of what we'll get at WWDC, I think. And then again, front camera moved to landscape on this one, which is definitely exciting.
Yeah.
But then we got the two accessories, the new Magic Keyboard. It's all new, thinner, lighter, 2 colors, has a function row of keys, which is an update. The big demo they show is you can adjust brightness with keys, which is exciting for a lot of people, and then a larger trackpad. Overall, not a huge upgrade and still maintaining its very expensive price, $300 or $350.
$350.
Yeah.
For the bigger size.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you do that math, right, you're $1,300 on the entry level 13-inch iPad Pro, right? That's just to get you in the door, right? You're not getting 5G, you're not getting more storage.
Well, for the 13-inch, yeah.
For the 13-inch, yeah. And then you're going to be another $350 on the keyboard. Then you're going to be another $130 on the Apple Pencil. Then you're going to some tax on there, right? So I mean, you're pushing to $2,000.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're in MacBook prices for sure. So yeah, this is going to be an expensive setup if you're in the market for that 13-inch Pro. And I think that's what's going to drive a lot of people to go, oh, how about that Air 13-inch?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I can save a lot of money. Do I really need whatever LiDAR sensors and multicam editing features? You know?
I have done exactly what you're describing multiple times. Been like, oh, I'll get the Pro with the Magic Keyboard, and then you look at the total and you're like, I don't think
it seems easy when you just click, and then the total comes up and you're like, what the heck?
But Apple Pencil, there's a new Apple Pencil Pro. You want to talk about this one?
I'm excited about this. I'm excited about this for a couple of reasons. One, it doesn't have any kind of color sampling photo sensor in it, which is one of the rumors that I was like, that's crazy. That's crazy, and that's not going to happen. I'm glad Apple didn't make me a liar today, and I was right about a rumor thing. But it added a few features that I think, as a daily Apple Pencil user, I'm going to love. This makes this the most instant buy for me of the whole event. Haptic sensor in it. I've been saying that right now that current double tap feature in it it usually activates an eraser in art programs. It can do different things. You don't know when that's activated except by looking at the screen. And it's very easy to be fidgeting with your pencil or just moving or just using it, and it register a double tap and you don't know, and all of a sudden you're just like racing lines and stuff like that. So having haptic feedback, very cool. I think having the squeeze feature or whatever in it, very cool. I like that too. These are things that are just going to make it easier. The less I need to use my left hand to interact with the screen and can do stuff just by manipulating the pencil, the better, I think. The other thing it has, which I think is very cool, is that gyroscopic feature. And, they had some cool demos. They were using Procreate Dream, which is an animation program. You can see he was like turning the pencil and it's turning the animation. That's pretty neat.
Very much so.
But I immediately, when I saw this, I was like, you know what could use a gyroscopic sensor with the pencil? A product that I do not own, but that you do, Ryan, and that is the Vision Pro. If you want to make some kind of 3D tool, you're going to need more sensors than that pencil. So if you want to draw in 3D space or use it as a sculptural tool or to even a tool to manipulate the interface in Vision OS, you're going to need more sensors in it. And I think this is the opening salvo of that. It would not surprise me that if maybe even WWDC, they announced the new Vision OS 2 and they're going, oh, by the way, it's going to have Apple Pencil Pro support as well.
Yeah, I think you're right, because it can't be that it's a full gyroscope just for rotation. I don't know. I think it can do much more to where it can get everything in its full orientation, and then the cameras are seeing it on the Apple Vision. I think you're absolutely right. That's going to be a big Apple Vision thing. Might even be Apple Vision 2, like the version 2 of the software that they bring out probably at WWDC. So briefly, Tim Cook hinted at WWDC at the end of the event, very vague, but just saying we're excited to show you some future things. I think they're going to show us why this has an M4 chip ultimately at WWDC. So with all of that said, Matt, are you upgrading to the new iPad?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's hit so many of the marks that I wanted, and I'm a couple generations back right now, so this is going to be a big upgrade for me. And it feels like a safe upgrade for me. Apple does these kind of, the Apple flows those incremental upgrades and then kind of a leap. And this is like one of those leap points. So I'm going to feel good about this for a few years. So even if I do really go all out and get the, $2,000 worth of iPad Pro 13-inch, I'm going to be like, okay, well, I can justify this because it doesn't feel like I'm going to be missing out on something even next year. And I imagine the thing they didn't talk about today at all is the new iPad OS, which they will talk about at WWDC. That's probably going to use even more of this stuff. So I'm going to feel even better about this purchase, I feel like, through the summer.
Yeah.
So I'm in. I'm getting it. Ryan, how about you? You getting anything?
I don't think so, but it's one of those things where you're going to probably bring it in and you might convince me.
You're going to be, man, that OLED screen, I got to get it.
I'm just not as big of an iPad user as you are, but it does look pretty great. So I don't know. Maybe I'll figure out. Maybe the nano texture will get me to use it in the field when I'm shooting like a car review or something. But yeah, I'm excited. They also lowered the price of the normal iPad 10th generation to $350, which for a lot of like schools and a lot of other use cases, a lot of people just buying the basic iPad, that's a great price.
Yeah, and that form factor's in the Air form factor, it's that all-screen version of it. Like, it's a good iPad for a lot of people.
Yeah, and then they didn't even show the iPad mini once, but Tim Cook mentioned, of course, we have our smaller iPad mini.
He's like, oh, by the way, there's this other thing. We might upgrade at some point,
Very clearly, this event is structured into the hierarchy of how iPad sales are going. But overall, I think it was a great event. I am excited to see these brand new iPads from Apple.
I'm getting out my credit card now.